if you're not making $1 million, it's just because you don't know how to make $1 million.
A confused mind says no.
I always go for freedom, like time, money, and location.
Trust is very hard earned and it's not going to happen overnight.
Pitching is dead, right? Australians will insult you. Hey guys, welcome back to our podcast, Thriving in Australia. And today we have amazing Peter. I kind of feel like I already know you. But for a few people who does not, can you give a little bit of background about yourself and exactly what you do and how you help people?
Okay, sure. So my name is Peter Strohkorb. I run a company called Peter Strohkorb Sales Advisory. And I help small and medium-sized businesses to sell more faster. And basically, what I've discovered is that the traditional ways of selling, so emailing 1,000 people, cold calling 100 people, or connecting people on LinkedIn is no longer working. People just don't respond to those outreaches any longer. What they now want is subject matter experts or domain experts helping them to make informed buying decisions, which means that the way we engage with our prospects, how we reach out to them and how we connect with them is super important. I actually wrote an article a while ago that I called Opening is the New Closing, because I feel that if you don't open right and you establish at least a modicum of respect, maybe even trust, which I'm writing another article about that basically says trust is very hard earned and it's not going to happen overnight. So you need to have 3 steps to warm them up for that. But basically to help them make an informed buying decision. And a lot of businesses, small, medium, and large, are still focusing on what they're selling, like their products and services, and on how they want to sell it, i.e., their sales process, if they have even got one. So that's another matter. But basically, the way that buyers buy has changed, and now businesses have to adjust.
Love it, love it. Let's talk a little more about things that you just talked about, right? You talked about how you help companies selling faster. What do you mean by that? How do you help people do that?
Okay, so the trick lies in quality engagements over quantity outreach. So I make a distinction between trying to reach out to somebody, hey Nazmul, would you like to buy my stuff? Versus, hey Nazmul, did you know that in your industry these are the trends and this is what's happening right now? And if you'd like to know more, I can share some more information. So obviously, the second way is more involved, and it's more engaging because it's more involved. But because it's more involved, it means you have to do some homework on the buyer first, and you have to understand at least what industry they're in, what size their business is, what challenges generically happen in that industry. And then you have to have a perspective, an opinion, some insight that you can surprise them with. And so if you focus on quality of engagement as opposed to quantity of outreach, then you will have less work, but more likely clients.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's because we have so much noise going on everywhere. So it's like we don't like getting cold emails, but we want to send cold emails. Like, I don't even know how that works, right? Like, we know that I don't like it, and I don't know how we're expecting somebody else will. So absolutely, I'm with you. Before we dive into the other topics, I want to plug in your books right now. So can you talk a little bit about the 2 books that you have written? And definitely everybody who's watching this on YouTube or listening to this somewhere else, I'll definitely give the link below in the description. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the second book I've written was this one called Smarketing, Sell Smarter, Not Harder. And it's actually about how organizations can focus on their buyer as opposed to on their product or service. So focus on who they're selling to as opposed to what they're selling to them. Yeah. And the benefit of that is that firstly, you'll improve your engagement with the client or with the prospect. But secondly, behind the curtain in your business, wonderful things will happen as well, because all of a sudden your different departments, your different teams will all of a sudden stop focusing on their own silos and they start focusing on the one common denominator that you have in your business, which is the customer. And so you get improved collaboration and productivity as well. And the reason I said this is the second book is that this is actually a revised version of the first book, which was called the One Team Method, right? And the One Team Method describes how it works, but this is more aimed at this book is more aimed at increasing sales. The first book was more aimed at increasing collaboration and productivity in your business. Now, you probably don't know this, but my background is German, and I've also contributed to this book that is quite a hefty little tome that is translates as innovative organizational management, and it's co-authored by 28 authors from mainly from Germany and me from Australia to help them understand what business owners can do to improve their organizational or their strategic management.
I love it. I love it. You talked about building trust in 3 steps. What are those 2 steps? I'd love to learn. I'm sure listeners would love to learn.
Okay, so if we talk about building trust in sales, we talk about you got to build trust with your customer so that they buy from you, right? But when you reach out to 10,000 people in an email or your pitch slap 100 people on LinkedIn, pitch slapping is when you reach out to them and try to connect with them, and then as soon as they connect, you try to sell them something. Nobody likes it, and it's actually ruining the sales game for every salesperson out there because people just don't respond to those outreaches anymore. And the complaint that I'm getting from a lot of business owners is, our prospects are harder and harder to reach because sellers are bombarding them with buy from me, buy my stuff, as opposed to engaging them in some business context that draws them into a business conversation, not to a sales pitch. So anyway, that's my little soapbox moment there. But it's impossible to build trust in one step. It is impossible to do that, and that is because as human beings we don't trust somebody from the get-go.
Right.
So we need to build trust in 3 steps, and I'll talk to you about what those 3 steps are. But I also want to talk about the notion of having to build trust. I think it's not only unreasonable to expect that, but it's also not necessary. Because you don't need to trust me to believe what I say, and here's why. If I am an expert in a particular field, say sales in my case, then you would expect already that I know more than you do about selling, right? Because I'm the expert and you're probably not. So you would have a reasonable expectation that I know more about selling than you do. So that then might create a bit of intrigue in you where you say, I wonder what Peter would know that I don't know, or what would Peter recommend, right? Now, you're not trusting me yet, but you're interested in my opinion, my perspective, my point of view, my insights, right? So that's enough to get the conversation going. So then as I speak to you about, in my case, sales process, sales practice, you might then find that I say some things that you didn't know, and that will impress you to a certain degree that you go, wow, this guy really knows his stuff. I hadn't thought of that, or I didn't know that. What else does he know that I don't know? So we can build credibility. Yeah. And once I establish my credibility, and then we talk about your business specifically, and I give you the impression, this is very important as well, I give you the impression that I'm not trying to sell you something, but I'll give you the impression that I'm actually on your side, trying to help you make the right business decision. Yeah. Then you will develop trust, because you trust that my intentions are good, and that I'm looking to give you a good outcome, not for me to close a sale necessarily. Yeah. So those are the 3 steps to building trust. Now, when I say we position ourselves at the same time of the at the same side of the table as the buyer, the whole dynamic changes. Yeah, because if you think about psychology and selling, the human brain has two very important components for sales, and one is the amygdala, which is the basic instinct part of the brain, which gives you your fright, flight, and fight instincts, and oxytocin, which is the feel good hormone that makes you feel warm and fuzzy and happy and cozy, right?
Yeah.
So if I go to you, Nazwal, we have really good stuff and you should buy it, your amygdala immediately jumps into action and it goes,
Yeah.
I'm being attacked,
Right.
right? And my instinct is to say, go away.
Yeah.
Now, as you said before, it's crazy that we ambush these unsuspecting prospects with unsolicited sales messages in the hope that they might be interested, when really we're just triggering their amygdala to say, go away. And how often have you heard a person say, or write back, or on social media say, no matter what you're selling, I'm not interested. Yeah, they haven't even decided that they want to listen to what you're selling. Their instinctive amygdala reaction is stop,
Right. Right.
go away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas if we intrigue them in some way, get them to lean forward and say, "Oh, Peter, that sounds interesting. Tell me more about that." We're actually firing the oxytocin of the brain, and the amygdala stays quiet because we're intrigued, we're interested, we want to know more. Yeah. So in selling, it's very important that you keep the amygdala quiet and don't trigger a fight, flight, or fight response, and that you trigger the oxytocin that actually makes the conversation enjoyable and interesting. So there's basic psychology and basic neuroscience behind those two approaches.
This is fantastic. Because I myself is a marketer, I'm picking things from this conversation. Like, I know somebody would, I know somebody would trust Peter just because he talked about the brain, the science. Like, there is no way Peter could make this up. It's not like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm absolutely jumping in. I love it. So yeah, I'm thinking from the client's perspective as well. I love re-engineering. I love, watching things, reading things, and re-engineer things. Even from these conversation, I'm picking up maybe Peter has used this example before, and the client is going, there's no way I can say he's wrong because he just brought in science with sales. Peter, I love it.
Like, Nazmul, can I just point something out to you?
Yeah, please go ahead. Go ahead.
Do you know how you were just passionate and animated about this topic?
Yeah,
That's your oxytocin at work.
I know. Yeah, fantastic. How are you? I was going through your LinkedIn profile, and that's how we got connected, right? How did you manage to get 100 plus recommendations? What did you do?
Well, so obviously I do good work,
Mm-hmm.
but then I also teach my clients how to get referrals and how to build a referral selling system. Because let's face it, getting a referral and being introduced to a new prospect is the easiest way of lead generation,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
But it's not just the easiest; it's also the most successful, right? Because you come pre-qualified by somebody else who knows the person that they've spoken to, right? But the problem is that most organizations don't do referral selling in a structured way. They kind of ask for a referral when they think of it, or they go, they get a referral and then they forget, or they get a referral and they act on it, but they forget to go back to the referrer and say, "Thank you for referring me. This is what happened," right? Because if I refer you to somebody else and then I never hear back from you, I go, "Well, I'm not going to refer him to somebody else," because nothing in it for me.
Mhm.
But if you build a referral selling system, then you can get more referrals and be more successful at selling to those referrals. Uh, so how do I do it? Well, I use my own method, and I teach my clients when to ask, who to ask, and how to ask for referrals. So there's a method, and then of course there's a way to actually get the testimonials as well, same, which is a similar method.
Can I and the listeners or viewers can we learn this referral systems from somewhere? Do you have a book?
So I can't teach you the referral selling system right now, but
Okay.
I can answer those three questions for you, right?
Well, please, please.
So who to ask is obviously people that are either likely that are in your ICP, in your ideal customer profile, right? And people that know other people who are in your ideal customer profile. So then you say, so that's who to ask,
Mhm.
right? So then we talk about how to ask. Sorry, we talk about when to ask, and we ask whenever they feel indebted to us. Whenever they feel, oh, you've done something, you've done me a favor, you've done something good for me, and they feel like, oh, I wanna reciprocate now. What can I do, right? So the trigger word that I teach all my clients to listen out for when they're looking for referrals is the magic word. Actually, two words.
Okay.
Thank you. So Nazmul, just say thank you to me.
Thank you, Peter.
Oh, I'm so glad, Nazmul, that you're happy with what we did for you. Who else in your network do you think would benefit from knowing about our services? Who can we do the same thing for? That's the third thing, right? How to ask.
Right.
So you make it sound like they would be doing their contact a favor by introducing us. Yeah, and you back that up because they've said thank you to something that we've done. So obviously they would know that we can do stuff and they would know that we can do it well. And so we say, who else in your network would appreciate knowing about our services?
Love it. Love it. I can talk about this all day. Um, can we re-engineer how you build trust?
So I have, before this interview, I warned you that I have an opinion on everything.
Yes.
And also I should say that I like carrying slightly controversial points of view, or points of view that initially sound controversial, but there's a sound reason behind them. Yeah. So, for example, one point of view that I've already shared with you and your listeners is that traditional ways of lead gen and prospecting are just not working anymore.
Right.
Now, somebody that might hear that for the first time might go, "What do you mean by that?" And so then I talk about how buying has changed because buyers are not buying like they used to. They're taking longer now. They're doing their own research, and they decide who they want to um, hear from in terms of getting further information or more details or answering last minute questions. So the buyers are now deeply in charge of the buying cycle, and the salespeople are no longer in charge of the sales cycle. So that means selling needs to change. Well, selling needs to adapt to that new paradigm, to that new way of buyers buying. Yeah. So that's something. See how you're nodding. So that's how I intrigue people, and this is the first stage of trust building where you say, oh God, oh bugger, this guy knows more than I do. What else does he know?
Yeah.
Right. And so then we can build. We can go from competency to respect,
Hmm?
whereby they go, wow, this guy really knows what he's talking about, so I'll respect his opinion now. And then when I say, look, but I'm not sure whether my method is right for you, let's find out whether we can work together and it'll be beneficial for both parties. Then you go, wow, he's on my side. Other people are just trying to flog me stuff whether I need it or not, but this guy's actually saying it might not work, but let's find out.
Hmm.
So that's how I go through the three stages of trust building.
Fantastic, fantastic. Can I ask you this? Overall, 2025 is here, right? What's your perspective on 2025? If if founder comes to you, and let's say first let's talk about small and small size businesses, and then maybe would love to cover medium sized business as well. What is your opinion or what's your advice on, like, hey, do these one or two things that have absolutely changed the game in terms of sales? Or what would be your advice?
All right. So firstly, my biggest piece of advice I can give you is stop focusing on what it is that you're selling. Stop focusing on your products or services because your buyers frankly don't care. What do they care about instead? They care about what they're getting. So I want you to think about what are the benefits that your buyers are getting from your products and services. What's in it for them?
Right.
And it's not your features. It's not what the product does or how the product works. A lot of people talk about, well, it works this way. No. Especially owners of businesses who've got a technical background and not a sales background. So they're really fascinated with how things work, but your buyers don't care. Like, for example, I had this conversation with a business owner the other day. They were in South Africa, and they said, well, we have the best Google integration for our products around. And I'm pretty straight and direct, and I said to him, well, nobody cares whether your Google integration is purple, green, or yellow. They just don't care because it doesn't mean anything to them. You got to say, what does that do for you, right? So that makes your user experience easier. It makes the app work more reliably. It can access more data and information, whatever it is, right? And then I have something that an exercise that I take my clients through, and I call it the benefits of the benefits. And what it means is that the initial benefit is good. Yeah. So, for example, you might say, if I help you to sell more, you make more money. Right? That's the initial benefit. What's the benefit of the benefit? If you make more money, what will happen to you?
I always go for freedom, like time, money, and location.
Correct.
I think money would really help me get a lot more freedom.
Okay. So what you've done here is something that every buyer goes through mentally,
Yeah.
but the seller does not either know or understand or care about.
Yeah.
And that is that behind every business decision is also an emotional decision, right? So that when you sell something, you need to not just sell the product, you need to sell the benefit of the product, and then you need to sell the emotional benefit of the product.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
I couldn't agree more. So because I have been a fractional CMO for 4 or 5 years, I have seen over and over again, as you mentioned, people who are technical, like mostly let's call SaaS business or software business. They can talk about their features all day long, but it's very hard for them to translate that feature into the benefit that somebody else might get. But they would complicate the whole thing, and it will take 3 minutes for them to explain it probably, but they could easily just say, hey, this feature that we have will save you 3 minutes. I know it's not a lot, but if you multiply that with 100 people that you have in your company, right, that's saving 300 minutes a day. Yeah.
So with that, the business owners who have a technical background feel more comfortable talking about the technology, yeah, because they feel they're an authority in that. They can really shine and they can impress the buyer.
Yeah.
But if the buyer is not a technical buyer, then it'll just be gobbledygook to them, and they will say, well, I don't understand, so therefore I better say no. Yeah. So what the saying is, and your listeners might be interested in this, is a confused mind says no.
Yes.
So if you bamboozle and you confuse your buyers, they're likely to just not want to admit that they don't understand. It'll be easier and less embarrassing for them to say, oh, look, that's okay, I'm not really interested. Or it's not a priority for us right now. Or we've already got one of those. Yeah. I'll give you an example, another example. This is an IT services provider, small, medium business in Sydney in Australia. And they wanted to get into the cybersecurity space. So they were providing traditional IT service like email backup and recovery and virtual desktop, that sort of thing. But they wanted to get, people were asking them for cybersecurity, and so they said, "Oh, look, we'll want to offer some of those services as well." Now the owner is comes from a technical background, and he started to talk about penetration testing and backups and all that sort of thing, encryption, you name it. But when he spoke to business owners, to other business owners that as his prospect, they were not technical. They knew everything about their business, but they didn't know anything about cybersecurity. So he was just bamboozling them, and he was wondering why even though he was impressing them with all his knowledge, with his technical knowledge, he didn't really get any sales. So what we did was we looked at his value proposition, and we looked at the way that he engaged with new prospects, and we found that it was all about him and cybersecurity that he was talking about, not about the business and the business owner. So what we did was we developed a simple question for the business owner, so they could actually self-assess, maybe even inadvertently self-assess. So we said cybersecurity falls into these 3 maturity stages: 1, 2, 3. Which one do you think your business is in, Nazmul? And then the business owner would think, oh, I don't know. Um, what are the 3, and which one do you think I'm in, and where should I be? And so right away we got a conversation going about where should the business be and where they're at, rather than talking about bits and bytes and nuts and bolts. So we found a way for the business owner, for the prospect, to lean forward and say, what do you mean by that? Or what do you think about that? And immediately we're putting ourselves into the position where we're an advisor and not a salesperson.
Yeah, yeah, love it. Now, can we talk a little bit about how selling to Australians is different from selling to North Americans? Like, what are the things that a seller should keep in mind before they sell to Australians? Maybe there can be sellers from North America who are trying to sell a product to Australians. Like, what would you advise? Like, hey, don't do that.
So the mentality of the North Americans, and especially the US Americans, is different to the mentality of Aussies. Our amygdala is vastly more attuned to being pitched at and sold to, and I really don't like it. But we feel personally attacked when somebody pitches at us. The Americans don't have that attitude. That for them, selling is actually a noble profession, unlike in Australia. Right? In Australia, if you say I'm a salesperson, people go, oh. In America, they go, oh, that's interesting. What do you sell? So they're actually much more open to being ambushed, and they don't mind. And when I asked Americans, I say, look, how do you feel when people ambush you with a sales pitch? Often I get the response that they say, look, I actually find it really interesting because I want to see what other people do. Right? So which then gives the Americans the impression that whatever works in America will also work in Australia.
Right.
And this is why you get Americans that come over here using a methodology that actually puts Aussies off. Or multinational organizations that are dictated to from their head office in America on how they have to sell, find they fall flat when they come to Australia. Whereas Australians like to be more informed and to become more educated and to know more about the stuff that they want to buy, rather than being sold to. So, in a nutshell, Aussies hate being sold to, Americans don't mind.
Mm. Got it. Got it. Um, and for let's also help these sellers who might be listening to this in 2025. What would be your advice to sellers in Australia? Like, hey, build this one or two skills that will genuinely help you sell more. Like that can be one of those next level things that people don't know. I have there are a few quotes that I just live by, and one of them is, "You don't know what you don't know." If you knew it, you would have done it already. If you're not making $1 million, which is okay, it's just because you don't know how to make $1 million, and that's right. It's just the information that we have, well, that we don't have, right? What would be your advice to sellers in Australia? Like, hey, do this one thing at least that will change the game.
I'll give you two.
Please.
One is, don't talk about yourself and what you do and how you do it and how great you are. I call that we syndrome. We do this and we have that and we're great. Talk about the customer, their challenges that that they have in their industry, their size of business, their stage in growth, and talk about other customers that you've helped. So tell a story. And again, going back to brain psychology and neuroscience, storytelling, we respond as human beings, we respond to storytelling much better than we respond to facts and figures. And that's because when we used to live in caves and wore loincloths, we sat around the campfire, and that's how stories were shared, and that's how we conveyed information. Right? So our instinct, our DNA, still says stories are better than facts and figures, and also they're a bit more interesting. Right? So if you can tell a story of a client similar to the person that you're talking to, and you talk about, and I always teach my clients to tell the story in three parts. One is, this is what the client looked like when we first met them. These were their problems. These were the consequences of their problems and challenges. And again, business business impact and emotional impact. How did it make them feel emotionally? Yeah. Second part of the story is, this is what we did for them.
Yeah.
So we rolled out our XYZ program over 3 weeks, and it cost them $1,000. And part three is, this is what changed for the customer.
Yeah.
And ideally, it'll be the opposite of part one. Right? Part one was all their challenges, problems, and personal, emotional impact.
Yes. Yes.
Part three should be, and the sun shone and the birds sang and the cicadas chirped, and everybody lives happily ever after. Right? So this is what the client looked like when we first met them.
Right.
This is what we did for them.
Yes.
This is what changed for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it.
So that's one.
Yeah.
And that also means that then number two, stop talking about what you're selling. Yeah. And I've mentioned this, I think, 2 or 3 times now, but it's really important that you're not focused on what you're selling. Now, as a business owner, we want to talk about what we're selling because we find it interesting and fascinating. But from the buyer's perspective, you're talking about yourself, and you're talking about your products and your service and how great you are. And still, in my mind, I'm wondering, what the hell has it got to do with me as the buyer? So sellers often expect the buyer to do the mental arithmetics that says, is that what's in it for me? And I always say, well, why don't you make it easy for them and tell them what's in it for them?
Right.
As opposed to making them guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. We want to end this podcast with something really important. Can you tell me what made you fall in love with sales? Like, what part of it you were like, even after these many years, you were still excited? Look, at the end of the day, we all know this doesn't matter. We're talking about engineering, marketing, sales, or whatever. There are a lot of parts. At least 40% of the things that we just don't like it doing them, but we just have to do them, so we do them.
Okay.
What is that one thing that you love so much about sales that you're so passionate about it?
Okay. So it may actually surprise you to hear that I don't actually like selling,
Okay.
and I don't like sales.
Surprise.
I I actually spent 25 years in the corporate sector working for Sony, Canon, 3M, CSC, and Dell, so a large organization.
Right.
And I really hated the way that we were told we had to sell, which was the way that I teach my clients not to now, right? Which is by basically reaching out to an endless number of prospects in the hope that somebody would be interested. Yeah, and reaching out could be like a cold call, a spam email, or a pitch slap on social media, right? Um, and and I really hated that way of selling because it just triggered amygdala responses left, right, and center, right? And every salesperson will know how sales is full of rejection, right? And the answer is that we have to develop thick skin and not take it personally. But so I didn't like that part of selling. But what I really, really like is helping.
Okay.
And you mentioned engineers. I actually gave a lecture to a whole bunch of engineers a few years ago now. These were sales engineers, and they actually hated being called sales engineers. They just wanted to be engineers, right? And and so I asked them, "What's the first impression that pops up in your mind
Yeah.
when I say salesman?" And they put their hands up and they said, "Dirty, filthy, cheating, tricking." and, and and so I said, "Okay," and that's noted. So second question is, how do you feel about helping? And they said, well, helping, we'd love to help. Helping is good. We're engineers. We love solving problems, and we love to, solve our customers' problems. We love to help our customers. And so I said, okay, so if you stop thinking about selling as being dirty, filthy, and manipulative and tricking somebody into a transaction, but you think about it as helping a customer to make the right decision, how would that feel to you? And they said, oh, we can do that.
Yeah.
So it's a huge matter of mindset.
Right.
And I also have to say, a huge matter of and challenge for sales management. Yeah, because sales management is very short-term focused. End of the month, end of the quarter, end of the financial year. Right? Bring home the bacon, hit those sales targets, make those quotas. Right? Now, that drives a seller to short-termism as well. So they start trying to take shortcuts, and they go for quantity instead of quality outreach. They do all those things that I say not to do because they're being driven like that from the top down. So the challenge to my method is also that you need to change the way that you manage your salespeople and to help them to be successful as opposed to bashing them up every Monday in your cadence calls. Yeah. And and the upshot is that I actually don't like selling if you talk about traditional ways of selling, but I do love helping my clients. And I say quite openly to them that, look, if you don't like what you're getting from me, I'll give you your money back, right? So I make the risk for you very low,
Yeah.
and make it really easy for you to say yes to me. And Nazmal, that brings me to another subject that you're this
Yeah. Please.
talking about the business case of your solution or service or product that you're selling is one thing, right? That's table stakes. You need to have a business case that says it makes sense to buy this thing.
Yeah.
You know? I then also said if you give the buyer a good business case, that's half the battle won. If you also give them the impression that they will have a positive emotional experience if they make the decision in your favor, that will get you over the line. Yeah, that makes the decision a no-brainer. It's good for the business, plus it's good for me. Hey, what else? Why should I go anywhere else, right? But another thing that salespeople often forget about is, particularly in high-value transactions, then transactions where you buy into a multi-year contract, so you're actually buying a relationship, and in any sort of transaction that involves a large amount of risk. What would be the emotion on the buyer side, do you think?
I'm not sure. They'd be scared.
Right? They're scared. What are they scared of?
I think the overall confusion. I think
They're
not.
scared of making the wrong decision,
Yes. Yes. Sorry. Yeah. Right.
right?
Correct.
So they go, "Oh my God, all this consequence could happen. All this is what's at stake for me. I don't want to get it wrong," and that actually slows the sales process down. Yeah, because they say, "I don't want to get it wrong. I'm going to scrutinize everything. I'm going to double and triple check everything. I might want to talk to somebody else first, and then somebody else. Just cross checking that, and it slows everything down. And it's also at that point safer for the buyer not to buy, rather than making that ultimate decision that could be right or wrong. Yeah. So what a lot of sellers forget is to actually help the buyer to feel comfortable with the decision that they're making to buy from you. Right? So if you help them take the fear away,
Yes.
if you help them make them feel safe and comfortable about buying from you, buying your solution or buying your product or your service, that's part of the sales part that a lot of sellers forget about, because they're focused on the business case. Oh, it makes sense. ROI is this, and the internal rate of return is that,
Yeah.
and time to payback is this. But they also forget that the buyer is actually shit scared getting this decision wrong.
Right.
So if you can make them comfortable buying from you,
Yeah.
that will give you a huge advantage.
Right.
Also, what will give you a huge advantage is if you make your competitors sound more risky than you, but not by bad mouthing them.
Right. 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 Right.
Don't say, "Oh yeah, my neighbors, my friends and colleagues, they're really bad. Did you know what they did to this other client?" Right? That will only come back to bite you, right? But if you make your buyer feel comfortable about how you're mitigating their risks, then they will go, "Hang on, the other party just said nothing will go wrong. Trust me, it'll be right." Yeah. Whereas I'm telling you now, there's risks involved in your decision, and I understand what the risks are. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, right? But I'm also telling you how we, in our business, we help you to mitigate those risks by doing these things. So you've not badmouthed your competition, but you've just pointed out to the seller that to the buyer that your competitors just said, "Trust us, nothing will go wrong." Whereas you've shown them exactly how and why nothing will go wrong if they buy from you.
Absolutely, Peter. I can talk about sales and marketing all day long, and I can listen to you all day long. And trust me, I picked up a few things from here and there, and you will see some posts. I'll be quoting you in a few of them, and I'll probably not be quoting you on a few of them. But I got like great lines that, like, I have 1 month worth of content from this podcast. I mean it. Like, I'll post a photo saying pitching is dead, right? Australians will insult you. So there are like a lot of things that I picked up from this podcast. Trust me, this podcast has helped me so much. I know exactly which route to go for, at least for the first few months, and I'm sure the viewers and listeners who were with us for this long, it has been a fantastic podcast for them. Peter, I would love to have you on this channel one more time or a few more time. And next time, maybe in person, who knows, right? And I would love to collect that book that you have written, and then I would love to give you my book. Long or the short, would love to have you one more time or a few more times if your time permits. I definitely think you have a lot of things to give back to the community, and you're already doing it with your content that you are publishing yourself, and also coming to podcasts like this by by talking about all the details. You did not just talk about the fluffy stuff. You gave tactics. You talked about the 3 steps. You talked about the psychology behind everything. I love the fact that you gave the tactics as well, so people can take all this and actually implement them in their business. Peter, one more time, thank you so much. And for everybody else who's listening to this podcast from Apple Podcast or anywhere else, do subscribe. And if you're watching this on YouTube, do subscribe and hit that like button. Comment below if there's anything else that you want to learn from Peter. I'll definitely ask those questions on our next podcast. Anything else that you want to add, Peter?
Yes, thank you, Nazrul, for having me on your podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure. I just would like to mention something that your listeners might like to know about, and that is, if they're intrigued now in terms of their own sales process and their own approach to selling as opposed to helping, I have actually a free self-assessment test where your listeners, if they run businesses, or they're business owners or business leaders, they can actually do the test. It'll take about 5 or 10 minutes, but it'll give them absolute clarity in terms of where they're at in their selling or helping right now.
Yeah.
And not just that, but they can also see where the gaps are or where they already are doing well. And it'll give them the confidence to maybe reach out to me and ask more questions, because I'm naturally a helper, as I mentioned, and I love to help people. So I'll provide you with the link, and you can put it up on the podcast.
100%. We'll definitely put the link to that landing page on our YouTube channel as well, and the books, if we can, on our YouTube channel as well. Peter, one more time, thank you so much, and see you on the next podcast.
Thank you, Nazrul.